Well, a flurry of lawsuits filed by former CSX employees claim working conditions caused cancer. Court records show an uptick in cases against the Jacksonville-based company, alleging the company knew and allowed them to be exposed to toxic substances. On your side's Jenae has this story for us tonight.
28 lawsuits since 2017. This one, the most recent one, filed on Friday, all claiming that CSX didn't test or warn them that they would be around toxic substances that led to cancer-related diagnoses. Since 2017, 28 lawsuits filed by employees claiming their cancer came from their work. 8 of those were filed in just the last 5 months, one on behalf of a Waycross man who died of stomach cancer in 2015. Court records show the nation's third largest railroad company is facing a spike in cancer-related litigation. Many of these documents nearly identical in format. The majority of the plaintiffs are represented by attorneys in New York with the Byrne Capelli firm. The employees claim while they were working, they were constantly in contact with diesel fuel, benzene, pesticides, rock dust, and asbestos. That exposure, the lawsuits allege, caused a range of cancers, including lung, kidney, prostate, stomach, bladder, and breast. In the most recent lawsuit filed Friday, family members of that Waycross man say his work for CSX as an electrician led to the stomach cancer that killed him. The lawsuit also claims CSX failed to provide the employee with a respirator while working on and around the trains. CSX employs 25,000 people in 23 different states. The 2018 lawsuits were filed by workers in 6 different states, some of those employees having work history that dates back to as early as 1969. Now, CSX isn't alone in these type of lawsuits. Union Pacific and BNSF Railways have also faced similar litigation for cancer claims in the past 24 months. We reached out to CSX today for a comment. A spokesperson told me that their policy is not to comment on cases that are before the court, but they say safety is their top priority, and that includes the safety of their employees. Reporting from the South Bank, Jenae, First Coast News on your side.
All right, Julia, thank you.